Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. A lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And tonight, of course, we're talking about a very, very disturbing subject, which is genocide. And we're going to be focusing on two genocides. There have been many in the world over the last century, but the two we're focusing on tonight are what happened in the eastern side of Turkey with Armenia back in the, started about 1915 to about 1923. And more recently in 1994, what happened in Rwanda, where a huge number of Tutsis were murdered. All right, now just to kick this off, I'm going to play two little video clips, and the first one gives you a bit of a taste of what happened or what went down in Armenia. Then we'll have a look at another one which tells us a bit about what happened in Rwanda. Here we go.
Recently, Pope Francis referred to the mass killings of Armenians by the Ottoman Empire during World War I as the first genocide of the 20th century. In response, Turkey recalled their Vatican City ambassador and declared the Pope's comments to be null and void. Both deniers and believers of the Armenian genocide claim to have history on their side. So was the Armenian genocide a genocide? As the Ottoman Empire declined in power during the turn of the 20th century, Turkish leaders suspected the Armenian population of supporting Russia in the Russo-Turkish Wars and during World War I. Starting in the early 20th century, the New York Times began regularly reporting on a series of mass executions of Armenians by the Turks. Most Armenian genocide historians agree that the largest loss of life occurred around 1915, with 1.5 million Armenians left dead from torturous practices like hard labor camps and death marches. France, Canada, and Switzerland are among more than 20 countries which officially acknowledge that the violence against Armenians was a genocide. However, the Turkish government refuses to acknowledge that claim. So, was it a genocide? The United Nations describes genocide in a 1948 convention as the carrying out of acts intended to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. But Turkey denies that they were attempting to destroy the Armenian people. They say that during World War I, both sides experienced casualties. Turkey claims that only about 300,000 to 600,000 Armenians were killed, while Muslims in the region experienced even more casualties, approximately 2.5 million in eastern Anatolia alone. Therefore, Turkey has maintained that the violence towards Armenians did not constitute a genocide. Azerbaijan is one of the only nations to side with Turkey on this issue. So was it a genocide? Most major nations say yes, but the dispute is ongoing, and since Turkey is a powerful
All right,
ally in the
now-
Euro-Asian region.
Sorry about that. It just stuck in the middle, but I think it gives you enough background. What they are, or do go on to say, is that the United States and the United Kingdom, for political expediency, don't recognize it as a genocide in Turkey come Armenia back then. But of course it was. Let's have a look at what went down with Rwanda. And this is actually quite topical because it also includes the arrest of that Rwanda genocide refugee who was in Cape Town and caught in Cape Town just in recent days. Here we go. Let's have a look at that.
Story this hour. Police in South Africa have arrested the most wanted fugitive in the 1994 Rwandan genocide after more than 20 years on the run. Fulgence Kayishema is accused of organising the killing of nearly 2,000 Tutsis who were seeking shelter in a Catholic church. Let's get more on this now from Al Jazeera's Catherine Soy. She joins us from Nairobi. Catherine, first of all, what more do we know about this arrest after years on the run?
Well, Kayishema was arrested on Wednesday following a joint operation with security forces in South Africa. He's expected to be arraigned in court on Friday. He has been on the run for many years. He has been going around South African countries trying to evade arrest. And why we're here is because he is one of the masterminds of the Rwandan genocide. And what he is being accused of is that he participated in a massacre of 2,000 people in a church. He said to have been the one who bought fuel to burn down the church and to bring down the church buildings. And during that time, all that time, we're talking about 2,000 people, children, and also elderly, women, all trying to save themselves. And basically what happened is that they had no way to get out. So they basically was just helpless. And this man and others participated in that massacre. And we also know that the priest who was in charge of that Catholic church is in jail. He was also involved, so he's in jail now.
Catherine, what system of justice is in place for perpetrators like Kayishema?
Well, the government has its own system. Many people have already been arrested. They have been convicted in Rwanda itself. We also have the criminal ICC court in The Hague that has also is investigating some of the people, including a mastermind who was arrested recently. He's also in jail facing those criminal charges. But what happened in Rwanda is something a lot of people, especially the survivors, say that they want to see justice. They want justice for their loved ones, people who survived as well. We also know that several other masterminds are still on the run. The government says that they are going to do whatever it can to make sure that justice is found.
Okay, Catherine Soy, thanks very much for joining us.
All right, so there you go. That's a bit of background to the genocide that took place in Rwanda, and before that, the one that took place in Armenia. And my guest tonight, of course, is Dr. Peter Hammond, and we're going to be talking about these two particular genocides that took place. And as I say, the Armenian one is just over 100 years ago, and of course the 1994 genocide in Rwanda is the year that South Africa became a so-called ANC democracy. Now, we know how that's gone. Let me get Dr. Peter Hammond on. Here we go. Hi, Peter. Hi, Peter.
Good evening, Scott.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent. Now, I can't see your... Oh, there you go. There's your camera coming on
I've
now.
been juggling power failures.
You're sharing screens.
We had a power failure at our mission. I had to dash off home, and I wasn't sure if we'd have power here, but we do.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's a matter of juggling between one power failure area and another.
Yeah.
So the lights just came on literally at 8, so I'm very glad that I wasn't too late for your show.
Great to have you here.
But I got to see just a little bit of the video that you were showing on the arrest of that chap. I actually was in that very church and saw...
Peter, before we talk about him,
yes.
can we get your camera on? At the moment, you're sharing a screen with me.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. If you just stop sharing... Yeah, you've just got to stop sharing the screen, though. So,
how do I do that?
At the bottom right, there you go. Yeah, just click on that.
Stop sharing.
Confirm
Okay.
stop sharing. That'll fix it.
Thank you. You've done this before.
I have many times. All right. Sorry, you're just saying about the guy that they caught in Cape Town?
Yes, I've actually been in that very church that had been targeted with the 2,000 people killed in it. I walked amongst the corpses in that very church, knelt down there and prayed right at that horrible site. So it was particularly cold-blooded. They broke holes in the wall to throw grenades inside.
Oh, no.
They came in with machetes. They hacked the people to death. They did pour gasoline over and set people alight. It was horrific. Probably one of the worst experiences of my life, visiting Rwanda in the aftermath of the genocide and seeing the carnage and having many painful interviews with the people who were victims of this.
And apparently the priest was involved too.
Yes, I mean, this is the shocking thing. Not only were Christians targeted, ministers, missionaries, evangelists, Sunday school teachers, priests and nuns, but Christian members of those congregations were involved in coordinating the massacres, and in some cases, even up to archbishops and cardinals were involved in it. Basically, what happened was Hutu members of these denominations helped coordinate the attacks on their Tutsi fellow members. And you actually had sometimes a Hutu priest coordinating the massacring of his own congregation. Just like in the hospitals, there were frequently the doctors. I was in a maternity ward which had blood splattered up the walls, and the doctors and nurses came in and coordinated the murdering of their own patients, where tribalism apparently trumped professionalism or Christian compassion. So it was a horrific example of how you can whip up people into hysteria, and I think this is super relevant for us today, because today you've got groups like the EFF and Malema whipping up the people to demonize and dehumanize the people they hate, and speaking about them in a derogatory way. So the whole preparation for the Holocaust in Rwanda was speaking of the Tutsi minority as Inyenzis, cockroaches, dehumanizing them, and speaking about needing to wipe them out, exterminate them, send them back to Ethiopia through the river, dump their bodies in the river for the crocodiles and have them float back to Ethiopia, that kind of attitude. There was the whole thing, they were called Hamitic invaders, because the Tutsi were visibly a bit different. They were taller, sharper featured, and they had more angular features. They had Ethiopian origins. They tended to be also the ones who were cattle farmers and so on, whereas the Hutus were the tillers of the soil, the peasants, so to speak. So what you had was tribalism mixed with Marxist ideology, where they demonized the bourgeois. So the Tutsi, who were mostly Protestant, happened to be more literate, better educated, high standard of living, more wealthy. And so you had communism mixing with tribalism to make the perfect storm of hatred for those who were better off than them, who were more productive, hardworking, and more educated perhaps, and in many cases more blessed. And so the communist hatred and the tribalistic prejudices all were exploited by the government, the MRNT government, through the monopoly of the media. They used the RTLM radio Minister Colinis, and they would have songs, pretty obscene and vulgar jokes about the Hutu, about the Tutsi, and they created new 10 commandments.
Oh, my God.
Hutus must not befriend Tutsis, Hutu must never work for a Tutsi, things like this, and ultimately that they were responsible to exterminate their Tutsi neighbors.
Yeah. Now, just on that score where you're talking about the archbishops being involved in the murders and stuff like that, I remember when I was in Greytown, this is back in the 1970s, and when the Zulu miners used to go back home to the Chigela River Valley and have Christmas, they'd break for Christmas. It was quite common that there would be faction fights between villages, and one village, all the men would get up with their pangas and their knobkerries and go and literally take out everybody in the other village, and this happened on a regular basis in that river valley. We'd hear the army helicopters going over and would know that there'd been another faction fight. And the reason I'm talking about this is because my mother worked for the mayor of Greytown, and she was fully informed as to what had taken place from the police. And she came home one day and said, "You won't believe this, but one of the people involved in the faction fight was a professor, a Zulu professor at the University of Witwatersrand. He was involved in the actual killing of the villagers in the other. This is a professor. It's extraordinary."
That reminds me of the latest woke insanity from America, where some black woman professor in New York State went up to a pro-life students group's table and started swearing at them, vulgar swearing, and throwing their literature off the table, cursing them. So a journalist went to knock on her door to interview her. She came running out with a machete, put the machete at the
Oh, yes, I saw that. Yeah.
And this was actually filmed. And then she kicked him in the shins, chased him out in the streets with this machete, which is illegal in New York, by the way. And amazingly, as a surprise, the universities actually fired her. And that's kind of unusual, because normally the woke people continue to be professors. But a professor who says biologically there's only two genders, they can get fired. So interesting that you can have professors, but what's a person like that, a professor of university anyway? And, these are the sort of people who are entrusted with educating the next generation.
Yeah.
This is how the woke sickness has gone to the point that people who would, and how do they justify it? Because they say silence is violence. So basically, if you don't agree with them, they accuse you of being guilty of violence to them, which justifies them being violent to you. And they escalate the violence. In fact, the film footage shows she initiated and was very aggressive to the pro-lifers at the literature table. They were only very mild and very accommodating and quiet.
Yeah.
They were in no ways confronting her. And she was shouting down and cursing their attempts to speak up for the right to life. And that's the way the woke often are. They feel so entitled. They feel so victimized. They feel that if you don't agree with them, even if you're quiet, you're still guilty of violence against them. Therefore, they feel justified in any kind of attacks, even in this case, throwing people's literature to the ground and running out and putting a machete to a person's throat. And a machete, of course, is the primary tool used in the Rwandan genocide.
Yeah.
So to think they've got professors like that in New York and America.
It's crazy. Now, Peter, let's get into tonight's subject, and before we do, what I love is your daily email that I get, where you go into the history of events that have happened in the past, and why do you think history is so important for all of us?
Well, I think history is super important because we learn from the past, we learn from examples of excellence, and the Bible even tells us that all these things were written down for our instruction, so that we would not be enticed or lust after evil things as they also lusted. All these things became our example to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they lusted. Now, all these things happened to them as examples, and they're written down for our admonition. That's in 1 Corinthians 10. It's super important that we learn from examples. And of course, that's why the cancel culture creeps are targeting monuments and museums and renaming buildings and streets and so on, because these things are important. The people who built civilization, and as you know, it takes a lot longer to build something than it takes to break it down. And there are people who build and there are other people who break down. Some people appreciate and bless their neighbors, and others are just are entitled and feel they can take and give nothing back. And I think the monuments, they are meant to educate us and remind us of values and personalities and events which were significant and important and which we have a debt to. And so there are books that are monuments, such as there's even the book, Fox's book of martyrs, which is called Acts and Monuments, which is the testimony of people who've given their life for the faith through the centuries. And you can think there's a lot of symbolism in monuments, which is so important. We've got 49 steps up to the Rhodes Memorial in Cape Town for the 49 years that Cecil Rhodes lived. There are 36 Doric columns on the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., because there were 39 states of the Union at the time of the president's death. The Statue of Liberty is a personification of a robed woman standing on a broken chain representing tyranny. We've got the Huguenot Monument, which is very magnificent, with a woman looking hopefully into the distance, throwing off the cloak of oppression. And she's got the fleur de lilies, the symbol of French nobility, on her dress. She's got broken chain in one hand and a Bible in the other. And there's still waters all around. There's columns providing shade around. There's beautiful gardens. The symbolism is huge. And she's standing on a globe, which is roughly around where France is. And you can see the boats heading towards the Cape. And at the Cape, you can see a harp. And you can see a spinning wheel and sheaves and an open book, symbolizing the industry and the arts and sciences they brought, and of course, most important, the Bible and education. So there's so many symbolisms all over. For example, Nelson's column in Trafalgar Square is 44 meters high and commemorates a great naval battle at the Battle of Trafalgar. And he died at age 44, I think. So, you know, there's these sort of symbolisms all over the place. And well-made monuments have so much to teach us. At Geneva, they've got the Reformation Wall or the Reformation Monuments, and there's so many historic figures there, but the central four figures up front, you can see John Calvin, who's slightly forward and a bit taller than the others to symbolize his significance and importance. And he's holding a Bible in both hands. Beza and John Knox are holding a Bible in their right hand, but just to the right of Calvin is William Farel. And for William Farel's monument, he's got his Bible in his left hand and he's got his right hand in a fist. And that's also so significant because William Farel was the debater. And even the Bible he's holding, he's got his finger in the middle of it, sort of like holding his place in the passage that he's going to preach from. He was a street preacher. He was a debater. He was an evangelist who won whole cities in Geneva to Christ. Wow. And he wasn't above using his fists. And so even that's significant because William Farel, for example, when he was winning Neuchâtel and Geneva to Christ, he would go into streets, do street preaching. The bishop would send his soldiers to shut him down and arrest him. He would then challenge a bishop to a debate. He always won the debates. And one occasion, that bishop tried to drown him in the local fountain, and he couldn't beat his arguments. So Farel wound round and gave him a haymaker of a fist, knocked the bishop's lights out, and with blood on his knuckles, he walked into the pulpit of the bishop and started to open the scriptures and preach to the people, while his friends Forment and Pierre Verret held the doors of the church closed to keep the bishop's soldiers out, while they then gave the people a choice: do you want to stay with papal superstition or embrace Reformation doctrines?
Wow.
And the people voted for the Reformation, and Geneva became a Protestant city.
Fantastic. Now,
and William Farel was such a fighter. Now, all this is encapsulated in these monuments. And so when we know our monuments and our books, it enriches our lives and our heritage no end.
Absolutely. Well, I just say it's a tragedy that a lot of the museums in South Africa today, in fact, most of them, are now run by African curators who have absolutely no interest in the pre-1994 history. And I'll
Yes.
give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about, Peter. The Mary Moffat Museum in Griquaton, which I've been to several times over the years. The old curator, a lovely Afrikaans lady, Hetta Hager, when she reached retirement age, she was literally thrown out of curating the Mary Moffat Museum. And in her place, they put the coloured cleaner as the curator. Now that's just one example. The Kuruman mission, if you go to Kuruman, you go to where Robert Moffat's mission was.
Yes,
It's now a complete disgrace. It used to be beautifully maintained. Same problem, you got an African curator in there. I went there on a Sunday, and he was watching a soccer game. Couldn't have cared less about. Here I was wandering around. I could have taken anything. There was absolutely no supervision. No one came out and told me what everything was. He was too busy watching soccer, and you could see the whole place had just gone to hell in a basket. It was just shocking. It's appalling how our history in South Africa has been just trodden upon.
Yes, at Wynberg as well, there's been so much theft from the local museum. And
Yes.
Wynberg was the capital of the Free State.
Mm.
And I can give another example. Carnarvondale, the oldest mission station in the southern hemisphere,
Yeah.
where the Moravian missionary George Schmidt came in 1738, I think. And so it's a magnificently well-preserved monument and museum area, lovely church built in the Herrenhout style of the Moravians. And there's a lovely coloured man, school teacher, curator who built up the whole museum. And at one point he even welcomed Nelson Mandela to visit. And a real labour of love, so much effort into it, absolutely magnificent. He's written books on this and so on.
Well, there's another.
Well, unfortunately, he then accepted money from the government, which Mandela initiated. And before you knew it, he was kicked out in his ear. And they brought a Hindu man in to run the museum, who very quickly embezzled things, got involved in scandals with some local girls, and didn't want to care for the museum. In fact, he wanted to basically get rid of almost every exhibit.
Wow.
And it's extraordinary how much was done there. Well, fortunately, the community ousted him because he had been forced upon him by the state. And they've now brought back the original curator who has his daughter, I think, doing most of the running of it.
Right.
So just an example of how the state can come in. They may offer you money, but there's always strings attached, or chains, as we say, or snares.
Well, before we move on to Armenia and Rwanda, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about tonight, I just want to give two very quick examples of similar things. For those people living in Pretoria, if you go to Kruger's house, Paul Kruger's house, you'll find that there's now an African curator. That's what happened when I was there a couple of years ago. And not only that, but a lot of the crockery and the old original crockery has been stolen because no one supervises it anymore, and you can literally reach over the rail that they've got and take stuff off the table, which people do. So a lot of that stuff has disappeared. And the other example is the Mafeking Siege Museum. If you live in Mafeking, go and check that out. It's a complete and utter disgrace. Anyway, let's get on to our subject now. We've given history a bit of a run. Now, you recently sent out articles reminding us of two terrible events: the genocide of Armenian, Orthodox, and Assyrian Christians in the Turkish Empire from 1915 to 1922, and the Rwandan Holocaust of 1994. Why is it important for us to remember these events, Peter?
To remember the prisoners as if chained with them. We are one body in Christ, and you cannot stub your toe, have a toothache or a headache without your whole body being concerned about it. You can't just say, well, that's just my tooth or just my toe or just my head. One body is concerned, and a joy for one part of the body is...
Sorry guys, this is South African internet. Gotta love South African internet, haven't you? My gosh. It should come back. Just addressing the side chat while we wait for Peter to come back up. I might just call him back. If you got questions, please drop them in the side chat, and I'll put those to Peter later. I'm just going to call Peter back. Here we go. Oh my gosh, I think Peter might have load shedding. Marlena, can you just give Peter a call and see if he's got load shedding? And I know he's got another option when it comes to doing live streams, but if you could give Peter a call, and if he is going to go to the other place to
The person you are trying to reach is currently unavailable.
Yeah, I'd say Peter's got load shedding.
Please leave a message after.
All right. Marlena, if you can just type a message in. Yeah. Can you just type in the side chat once you've spoken to Peter, and see if he's going to come back? Because what we might do is reschedule this for, let's say, 9 p.m. That's about half an hour from now, if Peter's able to get to his other office, and we can continue the discussion then. I do apologize, guys, but this is South Africa, and yeah, not much we can do about it. So just to pick up on the subject we were talking about there, which is how history has been denigrated in South Africa. When I was in Port Shepstone, it was about 2011, and I went to a place called, what's it? It's this magnificent homestead, right on the Umzimkhulu River, which comes through Port Shepstone. Royden House, that's what it's called, Royden House. And I had lunch there, and there was a lady from the Port Shepstone Museum. She was actually the curator, and because I had brought out the book on the Griqua, she asked if she could join us for lunch, and she did. And she was telling me what was going down in Port Shepstone. And what was going down in Port Shepstone was that the artifacts and the old documents and stuff were literally being stolen by the new African curator. And not only that, but stuff has been sold on eBay from the museum. And this is happening all over South Africa. If you go to Bloemfontein, that old historic street, and you go to the presidential palace, or the presidential building, which is central in that historic area, you'll find a lot of the cabinets are empty now. In fact, as you walk in the main entrance and you look to your left, you'll see there's a display cabinet there with just the stands left. Everything's been taken off them. And once again, you've got a black African curator. And when I went there, he was on the phone the whole time. I was inside looking through the house for about half an hour. There's some magnificent displays still in the house, but a lot of the stuff has been just pilfered. It's quite shocking. Okay, I'm just waiting for Marlena to let us know whether we can get Peter on in about, as I say about 9 p.m. to continue the discussion from his other place. But clearly it's load shedding that's foiled us here. Yeah, I absolutely ought to blame it on our corrupt ANC government. Yeah, that's exactly what it's all about. It's very, very sad. All right, now, just while we're waiting for Marlena to get back to me, does 9 p.m. suit everybody for a rescheduling with Peter? If it does, just put 1 in the side chat, and what I might do is wrap this one up, and just when we hit 9 p.m., if Peter can come on, we'll just restart then. So, go make yourself a cup of tea or have a gin and tonic or whatever. Just relax, and we'll be back. Okay, Marlena says, unable to call Peter. We are also still in the dark and battery flat. Electricity should have been back by now. Wow. Okay. Guys, look, I'm going to try and work a plan here with Peter. So, stick around. As I say, we'll schedule for 9 p.m. I'll come back at 9 p.m. anyway and let you know what the update is. But this is such an important subject, and obviously on Loving Life TV, I'll edit out all this burbling in the middle, and yeah, it'll just be about the Armenian stuff. All right, guys, see you hopefully in about half an hour's time. Okay, take care. Bye for now. I'm back. Unfortunately, Peter is still not available. I'd say that the load shedding has caught him. So what I'm going to do, or what I've suggested to Peter, is that we do the balance of what should have been live tonight tomorrow, and or not tomorrow, but as a off live, just a recorded segment, and I'll attach that to the first piece before load shedding hit us. And I'll put that up on Loving Life TV as a complete live stream. And of course, I'll advertise that in the daily email. So not too much damage done, but sorry, guys. This is South Africa. Okay, have a great evening, and see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time.